Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing great and that you and your families are safe. The reason of me creating this video is for the fact that over the past couple of days, there were some unsettling geopolitical activities in the region, and a lot of people are going through their own challenges, or some of them, they're feeling overwhelmed, maybe triggered, and some probably have different levels of resilience than others. And to be honest, I've seen a lot of these posts on social media and different advice here and there. Um, and to be honest, I wasn't too fond of it. I thought, you know what, let me actually create something where I feel this is actually going to make a lot of value to the people watching. So I'll tell you what do I mean by what I was not fond of, and who am I, and what makes me someone who actually can maybe add something, of value to you. So typically, the advice you find today is generally revolving around avoid these, let's say, news and all that stuff. And this is all important. At the same time, the best thing you will find today in social media is do these breaths and have a routine and all these things, which should help you manage, and mitigate any overwhelm, which is fine. It's okay, it does help, but there's a lot more that can be done that they're not talking about, and I'm not too sure why. Maybe because they don't have enough time, but there are a lot of more deeper, more profound techniques and tactics and interventions one could use with themselves people could use with themselves to access and experience a lot of deep relief and resolution. Yeah. So, who am I and why am I talking about this? So, my name is Taral, and I am not a trained psychotherapist or psychologist, but I spent, the last 20 years in as many different disciplines as possible, including learning, not academically, but learning the different schools of therapy. So I'm a clinical hypnotherapist certified with over uh, th- almost 30 hours of classroom training, and then we've had our own case studies that we had to submit. Life coach, again, almost 20 years of practice. NLP master practitioner, NLP certified NLP master practitioner, certified NLP business practitioner, certified NLP coach, NLP short for neuro linguistic programming. Yeah. And I've been a trainer, corporate trainer for about 7 years. So and I've done a lot of other courses, maybe not the time to mention here, and maybe some of you may not relate to them. But as I mentioned, part of it was learning a lot, therapy related interventions to use in our practices, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, motivational interviewing therapy, internal family systems therapy. These are all tools that, anyways, are used by coaches. So we know them, but we cannot claim to say that if you have a mental health problem and you are going through severe depression, that I am legally the right person to talk to. Yeah. So, yeah, from a legal point of view, we may not necessarily claim that we are the right person, but are we trained? Do we know how to do these things? Yes. So, this video is not intended as professional medical advice, nor is it intended to diagnose or prescribe anything, but it is intended to help you understand things in a much deeper way, support you in your, healing and transformation journey, and also guide you on where you can learn and what you can learn more about. Yeah. So I'm gonna try my best to keep this as dense as possible on purpose, because you're gonna find a lot of shallow, simple stuff out there. And yes, there is a time and place for them, but some of you may want to have the deeper understanding. So the analogy here I use is, say, you're someone who just got into nutrition, and or you go to a nutritionist. It is one thing to say, eat this, you will be better. This is the list of food, go home, versus to explain to you, okay, so this is going to improve, your vitamin intake. This will do this for you. This will do that for you. The deeper you understand something, the more likely you are to benefit from it, to do it, to have a more holistic understanding of it as well. That will add value to you. This in psychology is called the psychological knowledge. Yeah, some call it that. Do you have enough psychological knowledge about the situation that you're going through, etc. Now, since this is based on, or for the overwhelm, maybe anxiety or other emotions people feel, let's dive right into it. The first thing I want to mention here is that please always keep in mind that people are very different. And just because you experience something a little more intensely than someone else does not mean anything bad about you. Different people react differently. Different people have had different upbringings. Now, we may, and this is a tendency for men, to feel that, yeah, but I will not look tougher or stronger or any of that stuff. And what I would say is, if you can explain why you feel what you feel, then people will understand. Yeah. So if people say, for example, oh, you're scared, or, in a way that is shameful, you might say something like, well, unfortunately, I grew up around a family so and so, or I had an experience of so and so. And a lot of times when people hear the justification, they quiet down. Yeah. So maybe take the time, get a pen and a paper. I highly recommend you to have a pen and a paper, pencil, whatever, and take note of the things I give you and maybe do the exercises I offer. So write down your justification. Write down what might make this valid. It's for you to be this way. Yeah. And it's important for you to be able to validate how you feel so well that you can validate it to yourself and to others. And that's a very good step to healing, by the way. And that's why we said psychological understanding is a valuable tool, or psychological knowledge in the beginning. So let's say, okay, so we get that part. Some of you will have different responses. So some of us might jump into what is known in psychology as catastrophizing, thinking of what could go wrong and worse and worse and worse, right? Others might go into the need to justify, to blame someone. And that's normal, by the way. We all do it. It doesn't make you negative or anything. And one thing I want to mention, patterns of thinking, such as blame or victimization, or me or you feeling like a victim, they are automatic. So you don't need to feel bad. Oh, I'm acting like a victim. No, that's fine. In fact, that's normal. A lot of us have stuck patterns of thinking and feeling that are, let's just say, obviously they don't serve us, and we know they don't serve us, but it's just the way we are. Everyone is a work in progress. No one is perfect, and no one has it all figured out. And in a second, I'm going to tell you about some of the people who seem like they're not overwhelmed at all, but that doesn't mean they're doing better than you. Okay? So, yeah. So be mindful. What is your pattern? Catch yourself? Are you trying to feel good by finding the person to blame? This wouldn't, I mean, example, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for X. Yeah? Or, do you go into a victimized approach? uh, why does this always happen to me? Again, that's fine. And again, I'm not trying to say fight it, ignore it, resist it. I'll share with you later what can be done that I believe is beneficial and valuable. And again, don't take this as, the prescription in any way for you. It is highly advised to seek medical or professional, sorry, maybe not medical, or maybe medical in some cases actually, if it's a psychiatrist, or professional support that is more tailored to you. Yeah, if you need more tailored, if you feel that you need more specific, tailored approach. Now, see, the individuals who show up, who may not necessarily seem as overwhelmed, some of them, actually, that's not the majority though, are actually in acceptance. They have reached a point of acceptance. So it is likely that this person have reached a point of acceptance and is okay with what's happening, either due to a factor of age sometimes, or they might have had intense challenges growing up, so they reach that point of acceptance. But a lot of the others who may not seem to be in a state of acceptance, or sorry, they seem to be in a state of acceptance, they seem fine, that does not mean they're in acceptance. A lot of them know how to block thought. Okay, a lot of them have been blocking many things. There are people who block criticism. There are people who block, seeing their own faults. There are people who block thoughts of them being failures and always like to, or also always unconsciously see what makes them feel better. Yeah. So do not necessarily, I mean, this is not to shame them or make them feel bad in any way, but this is to say that just because they seem like they are doing better and less bothered doesn't mean that they are doing necessarily genuinely better. Yeah, that's a defense mechanism in some cases. Okay, so just being mindful of this, and sometimes, again, different people have different reasons to feel what they feel. Obviously, parents will have different, I would say, feelings compared to those who are not. Yeah, so everyone's situation, everyone's tendencies are different. And in some disciplines, like Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, they say that people are born with different tendencies. There are people who are born fiery, they're always passionate, they're always excited, and they tend to be angry. And then you have those who are born with a tendency for anxiety, fear, and catastrophizing. And then you have those who are born with a tendency of sadness, depression. And they have different body shapes according to their charts and all that stuff that they would basically prescribe different things for them. But you could have all these three different individuals with three different responses respond in their own way, sad, fear, anger, to the same stimuli, okay, to the same trigger. So, and again, as there is one time I heard Tony Robbins say this in one of the videos. Sad people find reasons to feel sad. Angry people feel reasons to feel angry, and so on. Yeah. Again, this is just to show you that, not to say that someone is a sad person or an angry person, not the best label, because it's not about a person, it's more about a tendency. Yeah. And tendencies change, by the way. So just because we said someone is born that way or someone is conditioned that way growing up, that doesn't mean it does not change. It does change. Okay. And there are ways to change it, and they change with habit. Yeah. Now, when we say change, we don't necessarily mean that, oh, if you're a sad person, or you're a fearful person, you're gonna become more angry. That's not what I mean. When we say change, it means they can achieve a certain level of acceptance where they don't need to be as sad, as angry, or as fearful. Yeah. So, just to give you this general, I would say, introduction here, to kind of put you at ease with a lot of things, because the first and most important step is to stop fighting ourselves, okay, and have a better way or a better strategy to deal with whatever is going on with us. So the first thing I would mention, now that we're like, okay, this is how it is, what can we do about it? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to mention is the different schools of therapy you can find. If you want to read a book on it, that will be excellent. It's always good to work with someone who's experienced in dealing with them, but I'll share with you what you can expect from each one of them, because I always believe that knowledge is power, and it's very, very helpful. Before we go into the practical steps you can do, as in day-to-day things that will actually add value beyond just breathing and having a routine and all that stuff, like deeper, more effective things, at least in my experience. So typically in therapy, there are a few schools, and knowing them is helpful, especially if you want to do some research and learn. You can always learn, by the way. It's not that you're dependent on someone that's not the only source, although it's a very powerful source. But who's to say you cannot add value to yourself? So the typical schools we hear more and more about today are acceptance and commitment therapy, which was highly used in anxiety and working with anxiety, which looks at how can you be in that triggering anxious situation and find your ground, find your center, find your sense without panicking, without losing control, and so one way or another with time have those thoughts tamed. Okay, there's a model to it. I think it's about 5 steps, if I'm not, or 5 different pillars. You can look into it. One good resource would be a book by the founder. I think it was Stephen Hayes, if I'm not mistaken, but the book is called The Liberated Mind. okay, by Stephen Hayes, I think. So that's a very good resource. Um, and the other one that is also quite popular is another school is the cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, in cognitive behavioral therapy, there are so many schools and so many authors. You can always look it up and find it. And I would suggest you look up something that works for you, because whether it's ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy, you can always find resources that talk about specifics, like for anxiety, for anger, for perfectionism, for people pleasing, for procrastination, etc. So I would encourage you to do a little bit of research there if this is something you find interesting. And if you're the kind of person who's like, you know what, I'm not into books, I would recommend audiobooks. Audiobooks are very convenient. You can listen to them while do whatever, drive, any of that stuff. Yeah. Now there are other schools, and maybe not go into them right now because they may not be things you'll be able to make the most of it on your own. There is, though, a very powerful, and I highly recommend it. One of the best things you can ever learn is something called emotional freedom technique. Okay, emotional freedom technique is an alternative approach that works through the human meridians from the Chinese traditional medicine, the meridian endpoints, and tapping these endpoints supports releasing a lot of the stuck emotion, fear, panic, whatever. You can find a lot of things about it on YouTube. The steps, the process, everything. It's given for free, as far as I can tell. And yeah, I don't recall a specific book that was issued for it, but I mean, there is a lot of stuff on YouTube for it. And personally, for me and the people I've worked with, it has done wonders. Okay, wonders. So if there is one thing you would take from this, is look up and explore emotional freedom technique. Which is usually used, the abbreviation used is EFT, emotional freedom technique. Okay, now let's get into a little bit of techniques and practices. Although EFT might be everything you need, emotional freedom technique, but I'll still want to share a few things with you that I believe will help a lot. So, the first thing that I would say is try different ones and see which ones appeal to you more. So you may feel at some point like, yeah, this may not work for me, but something else might work for you, or you feel more drawn to something else. Sometimes different people have different preferences in how they work with techniques and how they support themselves. Yeah. So some people actually do a lot better when they have more knowledge. Great. So that's what you want to go for. Others do something else, which I'll share with you right now. There are a lot of people seem to benefit from writing. Now, when we're writing, we must have a good and clear intention. The intention when we write is to process how we feel and be able to put it on paper. Okay? So if I am writing something and my intention is, you know what, I want to vent, it's a form of catharsis, it's a form of release, then I will write. And there will be no restriction, no worries about spelling, punctuations, whatever. It's just I want to feel what I feel. And I want to know what I feel. Because a lot of times, until you put it on paper, you're only stuck with the first two, three, four obvious thoughts. But once they're on paper, if there is something behind them that you're not conscious of, it will come up. And then you put that, and then it will come up, and then you put that. And a lot of times, by the time people are done, or they feel that they're done, they feel really, really good. And when they look at what they wrote, they realize, oh, this is just a way of thinking that I picked up uh, since I was a kid. But to be able to have that meta lens, oh, this is a way of old blah, 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 and separate from it, one of the best ways to do that is to put it on paper. Yeah. If it's in your head and you're trying to say, you know what, how can I let this, how can I release, and while it's in your head, it's a bit difficult, or say more difficult than putting it on paper. Some people can do it, but not necessarily it's the way most people can. Which is why when you're talking to a therapist, sometimes as you speak, or a coach, as you speak, you feel really, really good. And you get the idea of the solution just because you spoke. Yeah? Just because you articulated it. And what adds to that is the space that the therapist or the coach create for you. So you're able to process and let go and know all the thoughts that have been inside of you, the conscious ones and the ones that were hiding because the conscious ones were taking more room. Yeah? So just to be mindful, writing is one of the best things you can do. It will help you a lot. Okay? And one important thing to mention here before moving forward, is when you are feeling good, when you are feeling better, you think better, you make better decisions, you make better choices. Yeah. So sometimes we worry, like if I don't feel scared or I don't feel bad, that may not be a good thing. No, no, no. It's the other way around. When you are feeling content, when you're feeling stable, centered, you're actually thinking better. You have better ability to create better, make better choices, better decisions, and produce better results. So it's always good to, as they say, remain calm, right? But remaining calm sometimes require a process. Yeah. Now, the other thing I want to mention here is, and this is a very good and healthy practice, very, very effective, and it has different forms, and it's worth talking about because it's sometimes used as one of the fundamentals of most therapy, successful evidence-based therapy schools today, like ACT and CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. And in fact, you will find new forms of therapy called uh, it's called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or presence-based, or mindfulness-based something. Yeah. Basically, what they're doing or what they're saying is you want to train your mind more often throughout the day to be in a state of mindfulness presence. Okay? See, the idea is not just to not think of the future or think of the past and just to be present and think of the present moment. There's something else at play here. So, some people, when they think of the present moment, when they think of the future, they know it's a thought, it's an idea, and some people end up believing it, or what is known as identifying with it, or feel like this is reality, or could happen. And because they're disconnected from the present moment, they are more in that future experience. Now, this is not to say this is an individual thing. It's not like, oh, this person is disconnected. No, no, no. When we're overwhelmed emotionally, we are likely to disconnect. That's normal. Yeah? So the way to go about this is twofold. Number one, can you practice as much as possible throughout the day to experience more and more mindfulness? Meaning, when you're eating, can you eat slowly just to preserve the sensations? When you're drinking water or whatever, even when you're breathing, if you can do that, which we'll talk a little more differently about that if you want to do like some sit down dedicated meditations to be present. But yeah, if you can be mindful of the breath coming in and out sensation. And there are some techniques where some good therapists these days who are actually, this is one of the good stuff on social media, where they say touch a few things in the room, again to remind yourself that you're in the present moment, not in whatever future that you created. Yeah. Which sometimes, is just a habit you picked up from the past, or it could be a result of some bad past experience. Either ways, learning to be present is very therapeutic. Yeah. And this is from a lot of evidence-based research. um, Noticing the smells, anything that brings you to this moment using your senses. Looking at a few things, just being mindful. Oh, yeah, this is black and this is brown and this is red. Yeah. Of course, we breathe the whole time, we look at things the whole time, but without that conscious intention to notice what's in this moment, you may not get the full value. Yeah. Now, the other thing I mentioned, which is if you want to do a sit down meditation, is basically you sit down or you find a place where it's quiet. You don't need a long time for it, you just need 5 to 10 minutes, and you do your best to focus on the sensations of your body. Now, it's an added bonus, and it will benefit you a lot if you can not engage in too many thoughts. So if you catch yourself thinking and you can gently let it go, do that. But preserve that awareness on your breath. Feel your breath, how it comes in and out. Feel the sensations if you want, your stomach, your feet. Now, it's always advised to keep your eyes closed, but that's, I would say, depends on the individual. Some people go a lot more into thinking when their eyes are closed, and some are able to stay present when their eyes are open. Yeah. But the general guideline is to keep your eyes closed. And to some degree, it's good. You want to have a bit of a challenge and to be able to stay in that quiet space of pure awareness, sensation, feeling the present moment, breathing, and not engage in too many thoughts. Yeah, but you want to work with what works best for you. Sometimes it's a muscle you want to develop. Yeah, so you may not get it perfectly from the first time or second or even the third time. Yeah, but yeah, once you're able to experience enough anchoring in the present moment, you will notice that other triggers are not triggering you as much. And we'll talk about triggers in a different context in a little bit, okay? And that's going to be very valuable for you, okay? Because you can have now more of a slowing down of choosing your response rather than being a victim of the trigger. Like, it hit me, I'm having these thoughts, the feelings came up. Now, what do I do? Yeah, now it's more challenging because, it's a little too late, if that makes sense. So, just something to keep in mind. And yeah, so when I talked about triggers, what I meant to say is if you are already not in your best states of mind right now, then you are likely to be triggered by other things. So if something is worrying you, you might notice you're being triggered by small things or small annoyances. They may have been before, but they may seem like they're happening more often now because your system is in high alert. Yeah, and that's fine. Systems go into high alert when we're anxious, when we're worried, when we're scared, when you're irritated, etc. So as you do these techniques I mentioned to you, your system goes back into what we call homeostasis or relaxation. Okay. And that helps a lot. Okay. And it's good to create, and I'll maybe keep this as the last piece for now because I feel like maybe I don't want to make it too long. Initially, I wanted to make it as long as possible, but I feel like maybe that's too much. But the last thing I want to mention is have what we call an anchor, meaning for me, if I walk outdoors and just take a deep breath in and just feel the air, that puts me into a relaxed state. That's an anchor for me. Some people, one of the best things you can do, if it's convenient for you, it may not be convenient for everyone, is to walk barefoot on ground. Like this is what's called grounding. But of course, be mindful that it's safe, nothing is gonna affect you. Some people have grounding sheets and mats that they use indoors. Um, some go to the beach, but that may or may not be the best choice given whatever situation is going on. So yeah, just be mindful of that. Any or somewhere in nature, the desert or whatever. But again, make sure safety is your top priority when you're doing any of these things. Yeah, nature or nature related things are a good anchor. Some people have a different anchor. Some people actually relax when they cook, and some people relax when they run, and some people relax when they go to the gym or work out or meditate or whatever. Find your anchor and use your anchor. Yeah. Some of you, your anchor might be smoking. Okay. And it's obviously not the best thing to do, not the healthiest. But if it serves the purpose temporarily, people use it. Yeah. But can you create another anchor? That's a good question. Can you find another anchor? Can you develop another anchor? And who says it has to be one? It could be more than one. Okay. So find your anchor, and as you do it, whatever it is, say it's going outside or walking or running, try to feel the moment. Try to be present. Try to have it imprint on your memory, your feelings, and your nervous system. Yeah. So your system remembers it. So if you just go out and you're not conscious, you may miss out on the benefit. Okay, so hopefully all these things help you out. If you have any questions or anything, or comments on this, please share. It might help in, improving this, developing something else, or sharing another video with more details. I mean, there are still a lot of stuff I can share with you. Some of the people we worked with who had, I mean, different causes of, say, anxiety or fears or panics or whatever, in different contexts. Of course, we don't necessarily deal with people who are, uh, in the context is more or less clinical. Like, we work with different things, of irritations, fears, worries, and all that stuff. And the nature of, worries, fears, and all these things tends to be quite similar in the way it operates in one's biology. Tends to be. I can't say it's 100%, whether it's fear of public speaking or social anxiety or um, people pleasing and worrying what people think if we don't make them happy. There are a lot of similarities, yeah, which is why I'm sharing this video. And we found, yeah, if you look at the therapy evidence-based approaches, they don't really distinguish much. They don't distinguish much between the fears I just mentioned and more intense psychological fears. But there might be protocols that we're not aware of. Yeah. So best of luck to you, and yeah. Let me know if you have any comments or anything you would suggest for hopefully, possibly another video.